Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Super excited. I've really enjoyed doing these live interviews. And just like live TV, you don't know what's going to happen. I ask really great questions, they share stories. So you should stick around. Don't scroll past this. Stick around. And now I'm going to formally introduce this week's guest. Today's guest is passionate about helping coaches, authors, and speakers leverage their expertise. She uses simplicity as a growth strategy. She's the creator of Coaching Genie, a coaching platform that allows coaches to deliver programs and scale their businesses with simplicity. She's the author of two books, Coaching Millions and Simplicity Entrepreneurship. Please join me welcoming Milani Please join me welcoming Milana Leshinsky.
Thank you so much, Robbie. It's good to be here.
Oh my
I'm
God, I'm so
excited.
excited to have you on here. I feel like the kind of work you do is going to really resonate with the folks that are listening in. Before we get into all of that, though, I would love to know more about leadership, because as you know, this show is about building strong networks. The context is leadership. So tell me, how do you define leadership, and when did you realize you had the skills to lead?
Yeah, it's a great question because when I first started my business and hired a coach years ago, um, I was concerned that I don't know how to be a leader because to me, leadership meant at the time, the picture of leadership I saw in my head was I'm on stage and all these people are in front of me and I am leading them and they're listening to me, and they respect me and I'm the authority, and they do what I say, kind of thing, right? And I wasn't ready for that. That I couldn't imagine myself being kind of introverted. I couldn't imagine doing that. What especially was challenging is that I worked from home. A lot of coaches and experts and authors work from home alone by themselves without a team, without people to lead. So I couldn't see that my role as leadership. But then I got a book by Seth Godin. And what I learned by reading multiple books of his is that you can lead through ideas, and that I knew I could do because I always had a lot of ideas, a lot of different takes on what's happening in a particular space, in a particular topic of expertise. And I knew if I could share my ideas and inspire people, impact people with my ideas, I could lead. So I wrote a book, and then I wrote a second one, and then I started creating various programs and events. That's when I knew I could lead, is when people felt or told me they felt inspired by my ideas.
I want to just break this down a little bit because I appreciate your answer, and I'm always amazed, having hosted this show for hundreds of episodes, that I hear a slightly different take on this question, because it's
Mm-hmm.
in sort of an simplest form. It's like leaders have followers, done, right? But you're saying that in a lot of ways that that sort of narrative, like get up on stage, tell people what to do, like there's sort of a traditional what people might think leadership should be, even though in actuality it's not as effective. It's not something you wanted. It didn't fit with who you were. You couldn't imagine that. But getting a chance to hear from Seth that it was not just about, commanding people to do a thing. It was about sharing ideas. And when ideas resonate, people are drawn to you. And that's how you find followers. And that shift mentally, like, it sounds like it got you ready to share who you were in a different way. I'm kind of curious,
Exactly.
like, how long ago was that, like, moment? Was this, early? I mean, you've been sort of building around coaching
Yeah.
for a
Well,
long time. So I'm just curious the time frame.
I wrote my first book in 2006 or 7. So
Mm-hmm.
around that time, about 5 years into being self-employed and running my business online by myself in my tiny little bedroom back then, that's when I discovered that I can impact people with my ideas. And actually, I'm very fortunate to have a son who is a leadership coach for Harvard students. And yesterday, I literally asked him this question: how do you define leadership? And his answer was, um, leading people to solve a problem.
Hmm.
So if my ideas could help people solve a problem, I knew that that was my leadership. And maybe even I will add one word, thought leadership, because
Hmm.
people are impacted by the way I think, the way I see things. And so, yeah, you don't need to be on stage to lead people, although that's a bonus if you can.
Right.
But just sharing your ideas, the way you think, the way you see things, everybody is different because leadership is also about being unique.
So, Milana, I want to know a little more about who you are even before all this happened. Like the fact that, you had already stepped out into the world of entrepreneurship is interesting to me, but I want to turn the clock back. I want to know who you were as a kid, what you were like growing up, on the playground. Were you organizing friends? Did you run for school office? Were you quiet, just observing? Did your teachers notice like your potential? Did you have someone sort of looking out for you? Like what were you like back then as a kid?
Oh my God, I'm gonna ruin your idea of Milana as a kid completely based on what you just said. I was always fighting with kids. I was quiet and did not have a lot of friends. Um, and my rescue, my moment where I felt confident, where I drew my confidence came from music. I was not good at sports. I was not good at, lots of subjects. But once a music teacher came to our school and recruited kids to play piano, I found a place where I started shining. That gave me so much confidence. And actually, teachers didn't like that because it would take me away from the main subjects. And I started traveling to sing in a choir and to compete in various performances, and that means I had to skip math and other classes. So that was me a little bit as a kid. And by the way, I'm originally from Ukraine. We did not have kind of like when I grew up, we did not have class presidents or anything like. We did have leadership positions, come to think about it, but they were all related to being in leading up to the being in a communist party. So if you had any kind of leadership abilities, they would spot you and they would
Hmm.
say, okay, here's a future communist leader.
Hmm.
By the time I finished my school, it was 1991, and of course, the Soviet Union fell apart. The idea of communism um, kind of got away from the conversations, and things changed a lot. So
Yeah.
that was my childhood.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I graduated high school in '92, so we are of a similar era, and very very different worlds to grow up in. But for you, finding music was this outlet. It sounds like it was something you discovered you were good at. You
Yes.
liked doing. It brought you sort of into the world in a different way. Gave you a chance to shine in a way that felt comfortable to you, but not necessarily the traditional subjects that we all think of as school being like the priority. When you were 12, 13, did you have a sense of what you wanted to be when you grew up? Was there a plan? Was there a vision?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I knew I wanted to be a music teacher from probably about 10 years old. There were moments where I would resist playing piano and practicing, and I wanted to go outside and play with my girlfriends. And my mom would say to me, well, do you want to have a job like your piano teacher where you have a clean office, clean hands, beautiful environment, and you play piano, and that would be your profession? Because the alternative might have been working at a factory, at a dirty place, at a hard lifestyle, right? So my mom kept me motivated by saying those things. You don't kind of like, do you want to be a blue collar worker? Because that was a very common
Mm.
profession for a lot of people in the Soviet Union, or not. And I definitely didn't. So I pushed and I persevered. And by the age of 15, I was accepted into a music college in Kiev, Ukraine.
Wow. Wow. That sounds early to be accepted.
Well, because I knew what I wanted to do,
Hmm.
I had the option, kids had the option not to graduate from high school, but to go straight for the last 2 years of high school. You could go straight to the professional school of your choice. And so I sort of finished my high school in music college. But of course, by then, I didn't pay any attention to math or history or any of the other subjects. I really focused on music at that point.
Yeah, really focusing on the arts more than the science side of the
Exactly.
equation. And where did that take you? Did that lead you to having a business selling, offering lessons? Did you get hired somewhere, or did you have to
Yeah.
create a whole new path after school?
Well, as soon as I graduated from music college, my family immigrated and I came with them. And I remember my uncle told my dad, nobody needs music in America. And that really scared me because that's all I knew. That was my, not part of my world, that was my entire world at that time, super focused, hyper focused on music. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. So I came here to the States and went into music college while learning English immediately. And what I discovered was that the system, music teaching system in America is very different. My peers alongside of me in college and community college, they were at a level of music that I was in probably third grade of all the subjects. And so I didn't know what to think of it, but within a year I realized that I don't want to do this. And I switched my major to business and then later computer information systems. And right about 1999, 2000, I became the first web developer in a local newspaper. They never had one. And web developers were such a unique, um, they were such unique creatures. And so I was right at the root of the internet. I remember when somebody would ask me, do you know, are you familiar with the internet? That was 2000. And I would say, am I familiar with it? I am the internet because I was creating websites.
This is
So
really
that was my
interesting.
path.
So 1999, I was in my second year of graduate school, and they had a beautiful um, computer lab, like tons of computers, fast printers, endless paper that we paid for with our student activity fee. So I was supposed to be going there to work on my homework, but this was amazing. And I taught myself HTML, and I was creating GeoCities websites, and I was, just having fun. And while it didn't like, I didn't directly go into the path you're describing of becoming a web developer, it is interesting how much a lot of that really stayed with me and was useful over the years, including today, where most of what I do is I produce Zoom events, which is computers, right? Like it's about different pieces of that. So it is interesting that you went from music to business and IT kind of stuff. The wave of websites suddenly, becoming more useful and more
Yeah.
readily available was right there, but no one knew how to do it. So kudos for riding that wave. What gave you that first inkling that that could be a thing? Like that's very cutting edge that time in the late
Very.
90s. Where did you even come across this, and did someone just say, "Hey, can you do this?" And you said, "Sure, I'll figure it out," or like, did you seek it out in some way?
Yeah, it's an interesting moment. What happened is in our community college, they offered a class. I think it was called internet development or maybe web development or something like that. And I was just curious. What attracted me to it is the creative design aspect because you got to design websites. My very first websites had 12 buttons in front of it, flashing. I used all the functionality that I could to create something ridiculously flashy, but I knew suddenly how to create websites. But I will tell you that my very first job right out of college was computer programming. And after 3 months, I was let go and my boss told me, I love you. I think you're great. I would trust you with my family. I would trust you with my house, but you're not a computer programmer. And I remember driving home crying, of course, because I just spent 4 years learning computer programming and putting all my hopes into this being my thing and being
Mm.
my financial stability thing. And it didn't work. And I'm so grateful to that guy today because what he told me is that I would make a great manager. What he was trying to say is that maybe machines are not necessarily my thing or data, but I would be a great project manager. I would work with people. That's where my strengths lied. And so connecting the dots backwards, as Steve Jobs said, I can see now that um, I am more into working with people. And if there's any technology that I'm involved in, it is purely for the sake of solving some kind of a problem for people, to make it easier for people. And the company I run today is proof of just that.
Yeah, I think that, and I was just talking about this with some friends earlier this week about how when things happen to us and it's not what we want, um, how can we flip the script in our mind and say, oh, okay, well, how is this going to be great for me? Let's find out, because in retrospect, you can see how that was helpful to have your life sent on a different course. It helped you recognize other talents you had, but in the moment, right? Like it's devastating to have
It's
someone tell you
devastating.
that.
And it's impossible to see the connection between what just happened and your future.
Right.
You can only see it looking back. Like, of course, I'm not a programmer. Are you kidding? Who was I trying to lie to? I was not a programmer. I was doing it because I thought that was the profession that was hot at that time, IT, of course, and that's what I had to do. But
Financial stability.
it really taught me how to think like a computer
Hmm.
strategist, a programmer, so I can have conversations with developers today and I understand a little bit of the process of how things work.
Well, and it feeds also into what you ended up creating. So I want to move this forward a little bit because your connection into the world of coaching is very early on. Um, you know, if you talked about coaching in 2000, 2001, people assumed baseball, you know,
Exactly.
business coaching, executive coaching, none of that really existed. Um, so how did you stumble across that as a profession? You know, how do you
Yeah.
start thinking of yourself as a coach when it's not something that everyone's advertising to you all the time?
Right. Very informally, when I still was employed by that newspaper as a web developer, I um, started doing something online and I saw that coaches were hiring me to create their websites. And of course, I did not know what coaching meant. And one gentleman offered me a free coaching session. And I got interested because he was a former police officer. It's like, oh, I got to talk, I get to talk to a cop. I mean, that's intriguing in itself. Like, I never talked to somebody like that. And on the phone, he coached me. And I remember he asked me a question: what does happiness mean to Milana? And I freaked out because I had never thought about it and I had never been asked that question before. But that was my introduction to coaching. And then I started really creating websites for coaches. And in my conversations with dozens of coaches, I started learning what it means to do coaching, but also to get coaching clients, why people hire coaches, what do they need to see on their website to reach out and request a coaching session and to hire them as a coach. So that was my connection, still through web development, still through the online world. I started really getting closer connected. And at some point, I thought, I want to connect with more coaches. And I really want to teach coaches how to do certain things because by that time, I learned a lot about how to build a coaching business using the internet. So I created a little association of coaches and consultants on the web, which shortens to ASPOW apparently, or ACPOW. And so I really wanted to bring coaches together and speakers who could teach them things. And that was my first kind of like big project.
What
And
year is
also,
this?
that was 2005.
Mm.
And actually, if you look in Wikipedia for the word telesummit, you will find my name because my telesummit was the very first such event, virtual summit, in the world. And I did it as part of my association for coaches.
Wow, that's a great claim to be able to back that up
I
like that.
know. I People are always surprised to hear that. And the word telesummit didn't exist. I literally pulled it out of a hat at that time.
Right. Yeah. That's and here we are, right? Fast forward to 15 years later, 16, 17 years later, whatever it is. That's fascinating because the idea of bringing people together who were not geographically in the same place to learn
Yes.
was just not a thing. Like you either went to the local chamber meeting or the local Rotary meeting or the local PTA meeting, but
Hmm.
you didn't like go online. Now, were you doing? It was a phone, I'm assuming, because Zoom.
Yes,
I
it
mean,
was
video was awful, right, back
yeah,
then.
it was something like freeconference.com or
Yes,
something.
yes,
But I remember that, I mean, I had two small children, and I remember looking at all these events out there for coaches, and I couldn't go. My kids were very young, 5 and 9, and I couldn't imagine just leaving them and going somewhere. So I created this virtual telesummit. And as it turned out, I wasn't alone.
yeah.
Hundreds of people couldn't or wouldn't travel to live events. So I received so many thank yous, so many bravos. I mean, it was just my first breakthrough as an entrepreneur to receive that much feedback, positive
Hmm.
feedback from people.
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention. So,
For sure.
so that's interesting. You sort of stumbled your way into coaching as a concept because you were doing things with websites.
Hmm.
You then learned enough about it to think I can bring these folks together into an association model, and they can learn from each other. Then you decide to host a virtual or a phone call meeting to learn, which obviously was a hit.
It was a 14-day event.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize
14
that.
days on the phone. People joined from all over the world, including 4 a.m. from Australia. We'll never
Wow.
forget that.
So at that point, how did you start making money from this? Because this all sounds good, but other than the fact that you're designing websites, are you charging? Are people paying for these services and these events? Like, how are you starting to think about the revenue source for this?
Yeah. Well, Robbie, today people do summits for free and then they upsell the recordings if you're familiar with the virtual summit model.
Sure.
Back then, I did not offer anything for free. I just said, "You want to be at my event? $97. You want the event live plus the recordings? $197. You want the recordings and the event and a post-event a little coaching program? $500." So that event and the structure, the pricing structure that I used pushed me for the very first time in my life or in anybody's in my family lives into six figures as income. And we went out and celebrated in some local restaurant. Somebody in our family made six figures. It was a huge deal,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I
I
mean,
was so
especially
happy.
back in 2005, doing something that online, like
Yes.
not in a brick and mortar, is very
Hmm.
interesting to meet someone who's done that. And
Right.
but then is that sort of the plan the next few years? Like when did your model shift? Because clearly now you're about helping coaches bring their own programs online. So when did you start to realize that was a need and they needed some? I mean, the tech piece comes back in here, but when did that
Absolutely.
shift for you?
Yeah. So ever since I was doing these virtual events and webinars and telesummits, I needed to offer something on the back end. And so I started offering these coaching programs. My coaching programs were on various topics like how to create your own website that gets you coaching clients, how to create a little sales page that gets you coaching clients, how to create a membership based program, how to license your program. I mean, I still have some of those products, how to build a coaching team so that you're not the only one delivering coaching services. I continue to evolve my knowledge, and my programs became more sophisticated and more advanced for people. Um, and in all those years, I just piecemealed my coaching programs together from various technologies like you know, Google Docs, WordPress. I would hire somebody in India to create a little portal for my clients to access everything. And I wondered at some point, how do other people do this? How do they deliver their coaching programs? And then Facebook came around, so I would always add a Facebook group as a community component of my coaching programs. But a lot of people said, well, I don't want to be on Facebook, or people wouldn't want to share anything, or it was distracting because it is social media after all. It takes people out of the work mode and puts them into the la 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 mode, right? And I started looking for some kind of a platform or software, and I couldn't find anything. And I remember sitting and thinking, how is it possible? Coaching programs have been around for decades at this point. Group coaching is definitely not a new thing. Isn't there a system, a platform, a software that is an all-in-one solution to deliver group coaching programs? And what I discovered was that nothing existed and everybody piecemealed it. They would start with something like a course builder to deliver content, but then they would use all these other gadgets and bells and whistles to throw into their programs to actually deliver what
Hmm.
they wanted. And that's when I had the idea to create something that I could use for myself, because there is a lot of platforms out there that allow you to deliver content. But I also wanted to do group coaching calls, and I wanted to send reminders. I wanted to let people share their homework with me and with each other. I wanted to be able to give feedback. I wanted to publish recordings from the coaching calls. And I wanted to connect people without sending them to Facebook. So all of those pieces are now in my software, Coaching Genie, that just I think it's the best thing since sliced bread because it brings all those moving pieces together. And I honestly don't know how. Um, I don't even remember how I used to deliver my programs because everything now is in one platform.
As you were developing all of this and these early programs, then this platform, I wrote my second book is really focusing on research calls. It's a book called Small List, Big Results. It's all about how to build an audience before you try to sell anything. And so you had attracted an audience to you through these telesummits and just like creating an association. You're clearly listening to what people are talking about, where their complaints, what's their challenges. Was there something formal about how you approached that, or was it really just more absorbing what was being said around you?
Well, I did a survey and I asked people, if I were to create your dream software to deliver your coaching programs, what would you want to see in it? And people shared various ideas and various things. And a lot of the features that Coaching Genie now has have been created because, as a result of what I learned from people. But to be honest with you, and maybe that's the wrong way to approach, but I rely less on research and more on my own experience because I am a coach. I am the one who needed this software at that time. So I really looked at what would I want and how do I deliver group coaching programs. And as it turned out, I was not too far off. The software that it looks like today is very is it doesn't have that many different things from what I envisioned, 4 years ago.
I'm
So
curious about proof of concept then, because like the earlier programs that you developed them, you know, how to put together a coaching team, right? Like
mhm.
that's something you were challenged by, but you clearly knew others were. Like how are you testing as you develop things? Because it sounds like you're really great at coming up with new solutions, but people won't buy them unless they feel some urgency.
Mhm.
Like the need has to be pretty great on their end for them to shift. Even a cumbersome complex system is a system that they already know, so to shift from that to what you've offered, you have made a really good, you know, kind of argument for it.
Yeah.
So how are you testing proof of concept? Do you like beta things with small groups or do pilots, or like how are
Well,
you sort of getting the inside scoop about what people are needing right now?
I knew I needed it. And I also thought if I needed it, then there would be other people who also needed it. So
Mm-hmm.
I invested the initial investment into a development team, um, to see what it would look like and to share it with a few people and get their
Mm-hmm.
feedback. And sometimes I would get like, oh wow, oh wow, oh my God, it does that. Wow, this has everything I wanted. I would get
Yeah.
that feedback. And sometimes I would get feedback that sounded something like this. So what? So, so, well, who cares about that? And so I went through multiple people,
Mm-hmm.
different feedback, and I realized that maybe my solution is niched. And I had
Mm-hmm.
to really explore who is that perfect person
Yeah.
who would look at my software and say, this is my dream come true. And I discovered that the people who absolutely are in love with Coaching Genie, with what it represents, what it allows them to do, are people who, number one, create content for their coaching programs. Number two, they care about their clients, because there's a lot of people who are course builders, internet marketers. They are happy to just release content, take money, and that's it. They don't care about what their clients are going to do with that. And I wanted to know, where are you getting stuck? What questions do you have? Where can I improve my program? This constant feedback loop that I
Mm-hmm.
would get would help me improve my program. And also, I didn't want to just release content. I wanted to create a coaching experience for my clients. And so once I started saying those things, people started understanding what makes my software different than any other platform like a CRM, or any other practice management platform, or a course builder. Like I was creating a coaching experience in one, under one roof.
It sounds like in some ways you did what I'm talking about, maybe not with the same language, but having to figure out the who it's
Absolutely.
for, right? Because even the word coaches is kind of broad.
Hmm.
And within that, people who identify as coaches, it means a lot of different things. So you had to keep sort of finding and redefining and refining that to the kind of person who sees what you're offering, goes, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for.
Hmm.
Um, and it also sounds like you were really interested in creating some community around this, like that, having that coaching experience, and probably the people who were drawn to you similarly wanted a place where they could do that more easily as well. Like they're
Yes.
not just pushing information out into the internet and
Well, and
selling it.
an obstacle that I experienced, and to be honest with you, continue to experience, is that not every coach wants to do group coaching programs.
Mm-hmm.
Many people are completely content with doing one-on-one business model. Whether it's because of the complexity of the group coaching model, even from the technical aspect, or simply because they're not interested in facilitating a group and they prefer these one-on-one conversations. Not every coach was interested. So I really had to make a decision. Is my software for coaches who are interested and ready to move into group coaching, or maybe already doing group coaching, or because you can deliver coaching programs to one-on-one clients as well, right? Or should I open it up to coaches who are doing one-on-one coaching? And so what I learned is that you want to aim at your perfect fit customer. My perfect fit customer is the one who does want to do group coaching and creates content, likes the idea of creating a coaching community in their programs. But as I market that, I also get a lot of people who are buying my software because they do one on one coaching, and they look at it and they see how simple it is to use. Because I was on a mission to create something that you can use yourself and you don't even need a virtual assistant, or technical, you don't need to be technically savvy. And so you aim at your perfect fit customer, but you're going to attract other people who may not be perfect, but they will hear something in what you're saying that will get them intrigued. For example, somebody wanted me to market to trainers and educational organizations. And I thought that would be great because my software is perfect for them. There's one problem: I don't have any affinity or knowledge around that space. I can't talk intelligently around their issues, but I can talk about what coaches face,
Hmm.
and how to create engagement, and why clients don't complete programs, and
Yeah.
all of those things I could talk about.
I really relate to a lot of what you're saying. Coaching is about maybe 10% of my overall business because most of my revenue is related to virtual event strategy and production. Really, as of 2020, but I love coaching, and I've done groups and one-on-one and such. And my ideal client is an entrepreneurial woman in her 50s and beyond, ready to grow her impact and income through some kind of new revenue stream. And that is both fairly niche and specific as far as demographic and psychographic. But I also have sort of the parenthetical caveat of and a few good men, because the kind of guys that hear my marketing message, which is directed at this ideal client, and it resonates for them, tends to be the kind of guys I'd want to work with.
Yes.
But if you read my second book, and I just had someone reach out to me who was reading my second book, she said, your empathy for your ideal client really resonated with me. I am that person. And there are some things about how I talk about the work that really is like, women will say, it's finally my turn. No 58-year-old man says it's finally my turn, right? Like it's just a different um, set of circumstances,
For sure.
socialization, culture. So it is like you said, like you put out the message, but then certain people will come. But it sounds like you've really refined that. And if you wanted to shift to trainers, you would have to go do research calls to better understand their world and how what you do translates. But obviously some people might just find their way in because they like what you're doing. They may almost tell you what the service is and how they want
Yeah.
support. So
Well, and the perfect customer, the perfect client is the one who, when they use your product or apply what you teach or what you coach about, will get the best results, right?
mm-hmm.
So I really stuck with that idea. It's like, who will use my software and after using it will feel like they have gotten the most, the highest value out of it.
Yeah.
And their clients are receiving this amazing experience that they are proud of because that's what they wanted. Now, I actually didn't know that, but coaches really want to feel professional. And if a solution makes them feel more professional in the eyes of their clients, they are willing to, buy whatever that tool is. And so that's another part of the message that I learned. But yes, who is going to fall in love with your solution? Because after implementing it or following it, they will get the best results
Mm-hmm.
for themselves or for their business.
I hope anyone listening who's in the process of developing a new program or service, or is maybe even struggling to get one off the ground, you've heard some really great ideas from what we just shared in the last 10 minutes or so. I now want to shift the conversation a little bit to talk more about your network, because you've developed an incredible network over time. And I would love to hear ways in which that network has really supported you in these different shifts and transitions in your business. But specifically, I always think about, there's that sort of inner network, the inner circle of people that you're going to stay in touch with. It may not be very consistent, but it's easy to pick up again. And then you have this sort of outer layers, the second and third tiers or layers out, that people you worked with 5 years ago, but you haven't really had a reason to work with since. Someone you see once a year at a conference. Oh, these are people that you like. They like you. That's sort of a given. So these are people you enjoy. How do you think about nurturing and sustaining those kinds of weaker connections? Any habits, philosophies, practices?
Yeah. Well, I will start by saying that as somebody who is, introverted for the most part, I do find it difficult to attend any kind of live events or networking events. And actually, what I discovered is that the reason I loved doing my own events is so that I didn't have to fight for the attention of the audience, is because they already said yes to me. They already accepted me and my value, and they're here to learn from me and from the people I brought in. So if you are an introvert and you don't like networking, um, going to events, create your own. That is definitely one of the best things I have done for my business. And of course, with the pandemic, what had happened is all the events that I used to go to, which would be usually on the West Coast in California, they kind of stopped and shut down. I don't know, how long it will take to for people to really start being comfortable again to moving. So I ended up feeling very isolated and lonely from the business perspective. And I actually decided to join a local group in my small town in Pennsylvania. I joined a local group of women for the sake of just having these connections. But I'm going to go back and answer the question of how I nurture the connections and the network that I have built over the years, because you can't help it. You have to build a network. It happens sometimes naturally, sometimes you have to put more effort into it. But I have built my connections from the perspective of referral partners and joint venture partnerships. Today, I have probably about 100 to 150 people that I could approach who already know me. They already trust me. They've had an experience with me. And I can say, I'd love to see how we can support each other this year. And maybe, 20, 30, 40 of them will say yes. And those who say no, the timing wasn't good, so I will come back later. So I've always approached it as in like supportive partnerships, help each other promote our products and services, and let the word out to our respective audiences.
I so much in there. So, a couple of things I want to talk about. One is the idea of feeling lonely as a business owner, particularly in the pandemic. It's interesting because I'm currently writing a book called Breakout of Boredom: Low Tech Solutions for Highly Engaging Zoom Events, which by the time this comes out, it will already be publicly launched because it's coming out the day before this goes live. So, future me is very proud that I accomplished this. And the reason it's coming out on March 13th, 2023 is that on March 13th, 2020, I hosted my first virtual happy hour. And it was almost a gut reaction. It wasn't purposeful. I wasn't a plan. I wasn't building a business. I wasn't piloting. I wasn't testing. I just knew that my work pre-pandemic had all been about building community and building great networks and teaching people how to organize highly engaging, welcoming, inclusive in-person conferences, which we didn't call in-person back then. We just called them conferences. And I knew that events were about content and connection, and that virtual events couldn't be an exception if we were going to be on them every day, like all day long. And little did I know that that was actually true, and people really did need that. And over the last 3 years, I've developed that. And so I've created this incredible global network in the last 3 years. And it wasn't like I was a homebody for the 5 years prior, but I do feel like I've developed deeper relationships in the last 3 years with people I have yet to meet in person. And some people I may never meet in person. Like, it would take some considered effort on both our parts for us to cross paths in the same town. And I think that people really are recognizing the need to come together. You found something local, which is wonderful. I recently moved. I'm now not too far from you in suburban Philadelphia, in the Philly suburbs. But I haven't found my like local group yet, and I haven't worked so hard at it because there is this sort of global network. And you come from a world of virtual connections from way back in the day. So I'm curious whether you've sought out any virtual engaging events as well, since some of the stuff you were going to in person on the West Coast, is still dormant. Have you found online opportunities, particularly as an introvert, to be helpful, or did you really stick with sort of a local lens for this?
Yeah. Well, I think that I continue to do what comes more natural to me, and I create events.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be the third year in a row where I'm running my own virtual summits on group coaching, on coaching programs. what that does is it brings together like-minded people who all want to scale their business with group
Mm,
programs. They all want to learn how to grow their coaching business with more than just one-on-one coaching clients. And so I have attracted amazing speakers, amazing participants. I changed the format of my telesummits, as I used to call them, to virtual summits. I changed the format from simply doing interviews pre-recorded and putting them out there on the page for people to listen to. I changed it to live streaming, and that is something that landed so incredibly well with my audience because people are tired of being sent to a page with a bunch of videos. Then the page disappears 24 hours later in some formats. They want to engage with each other. I also do things like a panel discussion throughout the event. I do multiple panel discussions where speakers get to meet each other and in front of a live audience, virtual live audience, answer questions that I come up with, that the audience asks them. So that has been my virtual networking effort,
yeah.
and I love it because it's my event, and I get to create something like a sandbox, and then I invite others to play with me in my sandbox.
I love so much of what you just said. The word virtual summit doesn't do it justice because the word virtual summit still has sort of a connotation of the pre-recorded.
Yes.
I'll drip out 1 to 4 videos a day for X number of days, and then the end you can buy it for $99, and no one will actually watch the replays anyway. Um, what you've designed is a conference,
Yes.
is an interactive conversation. It's a dialogue, it's panels, it's connection, it's engagement. It's live. I think that's the key here is to develop something that's live where people can come together. I think that has so much value. And in the very beginning of the pandemic, everybody and their mother decided to host a virtual summit all the old fashioned way with the pre-recorded interviews. And they asked me to be on and talking about Zoom. And I said, okay, but if you don't have any live component, and I'm happy to host it, if we don't do anything live, I'm going to be using your summit as an example of what not to do. And so I got a lot of practice hosting other people's stuff in the April and May of 2020 as everybody quickly shifted to sharing content online.
Well, you did
Um,
better than I did. In April or May of 2020, I was still shaking in my house from what's gonna happen and what's to come. I just couldn't shake off the fear of what was happening. It was only in 2021 that I kind of like woke
wow.
up and
Yeah.
decided, okay, I gotta do something. I gotta do. What does Milana normally do? Oh, Milana hosts virtual, engaging virtual events, and so that was my first. And then in 2022. I did a second one, and I am just right now starting to get ready for my third one, all around group coaching, and
That's awesome.
I'm excited. Yeah.
March 13th, 2020, I host my first virtual happy hour, and a month later, realize this is a thing. I brand it. It becomes the No More Bad Zoom virtual happy hour. I get the domain nomoorebadzoom.com. I also announced the pilot of a 4-week training to teach people how to become more confident and competent using Zoom. Fill that with 15 people, $500 a piece. Starts on May 1st or about May 2nd. Run that 4 weeks in a row. Right away, realize I'm going to do this again. Run it 4 months in a row, back to
Mm,
back. By the third one, it's a certification program. And by the summer, organizations are hiring me to bring their events online with less stress and greater participant engagement.
wow.
It was, seat of my pants. Of course, I'm not going to talk about all the things that didn't work because I tried a lot of other stuff too. But a lot of it was I was coaching at the time, and I thought, I was getting all these inbound inquiries, a lot of pick your brain kind of calls, or can you help us with this, Robbie? And I turned those calls into research calls, and that was how I was able to quickly develop a pilot. Because I thought, as a coach, I would never tell my clients to just fill their calendar with like random calls. Like, sure, you're busy, but you're not making any money.
Yeah.
So in some
Well,
ways, like the coach mindset really set me up for some success early in all this.
so the pandemic was announced late February, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And right the last week of January is when I announced Coaching Genie to my audience. And I got 50 customers to purchase it immediately, and then everything shut down.
Wow.
So I felt so fortunate, so blessed that the timing, and my friend pushed me to do it, and I kept waiting. If you know anything about software development, the feeling you always get is it's not done yet.
It's
It's
not
not done
done.
yet.
Can't
No,
push go.
there's one more thing. Well, we
Yeah.
haven't tested this. And she said, well, when are you going to do that? And so I launched it. And then the pandemic was announced as the international worldwide emergency. And yeah,
Yeah,
that
March
was,
13th is when the United States declared it, actually,
okay.
and the world sort of hit pause in that moment. But it was coming in January and February, and I had a sense of it. I was watching this all happen unfold, which I kind of took it. I took it seriously and I took it to heart really quickly. I think that helped me. I was very stuck for a little bit, but my little bit is not very long. But I was very stuck because I was all about in-person events. But
Mm.
this has been amazing, and I'm so glad to be sharing what you did. Your journey has been really, I think, instructive for folks listening. I would love to know how people can find you and learn about this platform and basically connect with your work.
Yeah, well, it was just a delight to talk to you, Robbie. First of all, if you are somebody who does want to do group coaching or deliver coaching programs, go to coachinggenie.com. If you haven't thought about it yet, or maybe you're just starting to plan it, I do have a gift for your listeners. It's a coaching program planner. Whether you are offering your program one on one or in a group format, there are steps outlined in this planner that will make it delivery ready so you can just show up and coach. Should I give the link?
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah, if you go to coachinggenie.com/podcast gift, that's where
Mhm.
you'll find it. Coachinggenie.com/podcast gift. I've delivered over 100 coaching programs, and this 4-page planner just summarizes everything you need to design a coaching program that will wow your clients.
That's brilliant. We'll put all those links in the show notes at ontheschmooze.com. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you for having me, Robbie.